Have you always wanted to play a Frost Mage, but you find it a little bit too complicated? When should you be shattering your freezing stacks? When should you be using cooldowns? And so on. Well, in this guide here, I will be taking you through a full guide on how to use the Single-Button Assistant with a Frost Mage. And not just how to use it, but how to actually min-max with the Single-Button Assistant. In this video here, I will take you through the stats, the talents, the rotation, and even show you a glimpse of gameplay on how I would play it myself. But let's get to it. When it comes to stats, I always recommend going with the highest amount of your main stat, which in this case is intellect. And how do you actually do that is by going with items that has the highest upgrade level. So for example, here you can see my helmet is an adventure helmet. I would only replace this helmet if I got an item that is a higher upgrade level. So for example, a veteran, a champion, a hero, or even a myth item. So whenever I get a higher upgrade level, I will replace my helmet with it. But when I get an item that is the same upgrade level as the one I already have, that is when we're going to be looking at the secondary stats. First of all, we have Mastery. Mastery just increases all the damage you do with spells that either freeze or shatter your enemies. So technically, just almost every of your spell is increased by Mastery, which is nice. So it increases all the damage you do just passively. Secondly, we have Critical Strike here. Critical Strike has tons of things it does. Default, I know Critical Strike is just increasing the chance of doing double damage, when your spells actually can have a Critical Strike. But we have tons of talents which is actually increased by do more things when critting. For example, we have this one here. When Frostball Critical Strike, it applies one additional stack of freezing. Also, Frostball and Flurry Critical Strike damage is increased by 20. So now when you actually crit with these two spells, they deal even more damage. Also, Shatter damage has a 50% increased chance to Critical Strike, which is nice. Because if you have more crit now, you can almost get it up to 100% for having Shatter to do Critical Strike. Also, Shatter Critical Strike damage is increased by 50% of your Critical Strike chance, which is nice. So when Shatter actually crits, it crits for even more. So just all crit can really do a lot of things in here. We also have the Critical Strike damage of your spells is increased by 5. So basically, instead of always dealing 200% more damage, we're going to do 205. We also have Critical Strike increased by 2. And each time your Frost Ball fails to Critical Strike, it gains 10% increased Critical Strike chance. And Critical Strike bonus is removed when it affects the spell Critical Strike. So it will also help you do more crits. So we just have a lot of crit. So that's why Critical Strike is just sublime. It is really something that can make your damage speed peak up. After that, we have Haste. Haste is just increasing the casting speed on spells where you actually have to cast, like a Frostball. It will also reduce the global cooldown, and when you use the Single-Button Assistant, it will punish you and give you 25% longer global cooldown. So by having more haste, it actually kind of fights against this punishment, which of course is very nice. It also reduces the cooldown on your spells where the spell is having a green cooldown. So you can see this spell here has a green cooldown, which means it gets reduced in cooldown the more haste you have, which of course is pretty cool. So haste is great, does a lot of things. Then lastly, we have Versatility. Versatility just flat out increases the damage you do, and it also reduces the damage you take. It's a great stat for if you're a solo player and you want to do a lot of solo gameplay, in a lot of delves and so on. It's also great for PvP. All the PvP gear you buy, player versus player gear, basically have Versatility on them, unless when you upgrade them, they can't get it removed, but still. So Versatility, just great stat for solo playing. But still, on paper, if you want to deal the most damage, this is the ones. Though a lot of the meta websites, they recommend to not just only go into Mastery. You should also have other stats high up. So, try and get Mastery, but also a lot of crit and maybe even some haste. But don't just go fully in on Mastery. You also want some crit and haste in there. So, kind of have it as a triangle where you try to not get equal amount, but maybe the biggest part is Mastery, and then also a lot of Critical Strike and haste. Just saying. But yeah, that's the stats. So when it comes to talents, we are using two different builds. We have a dungeon build and a raid build. Both of the export codes for the builds is on my Discord. Link in the description, and there's a Discord. The reason why I keep them there so I can keep updating them, so you can always get the newest updates from me. So the difference between these two builds is that we have one build called Dungeons, which is both for leveling, dungeon, and delves. And then we have another build called for raid, which is all about single target damage. both of the builds are using Spellslinger, which is just currently the meta. It is just dealing so much more damage, where Frostfire really utilizing something for example, Isometric Core, but it just doesn't deal enough damage for, like, Spellslinger just feels like it just deals so much more damage. Also, you will not find any meta sites that's going to be recommending Frostfire. I don't think so, especially the ones I've been looking at. Everyone is like saying Spellslinger is definitely the go-to, especially like talents like Force of Will, which is just super great, especially for the rotation with single button and so on. In the left side here, we're using all the same things in both of the builds. The only difference we have is that in the dungeon build we use Spell Steal and we use Dragon Breath, and in the raid build we are using Frost Conditioning and we are using Mirror Image. Keep in mind, in the raid build where we use Mirror Image, it has nothing to do with damage. Mirror Image is not a damage spell anymore. It is a threat spell. So that means when you activate, while active, you generate significantly reduced threat. So that means you will be able to summon your mirror images and you will be able to do big burst damage and almost get no threat. So you're not gonna take aggro from the boss, even though you really start like pumping out the second he pulls, because this one he will help you deal less threat. Because I think the logic behind it is that the enemy is like getting confused on who is actually attacking of those 4 people, like you and your 3 minions. So it's not anymore a damage spell, it's purely just a threat spell, which is nice to have in a raid, because then you can literally start pumping the second the tank pulls the boss. So just letting you know. When it comes to the right side, which of course is the important section here, we are using that is where like the 2 big builds are differently. For the dungeon build, we are using, for example, Lonely Winter, where all our spells deal 3% more damage. And in the raid build, we are using the Water Elemental, because single target wise, the Water Elemental just deals great damage. Also, where, for example, with this one here, we use Shifting Shard in the dungeon build because we don't use the elemental, where in the raid build we're using Attune Familiar, because then your water elemental has a 50% chance to conjure a Splendor alongside its water bolt. So basically, dungeon build without elemental, raid build with elemental, because yeah, single target wise it makes sense. When it comes to the raid build, we are using spells like Frozen Touch, which will give you more often Fingers of Frost and will give you more often Brain Freeze. We are also using the Piercing Cold, which is increasing the critical damage on Frostball and Flurry. And we are also, just to see here, we are also switching Splintering Ray to Frigid Focus, because then your Ray of Frost is going to deal 30% more damage. And also lastly, we are using, I'm pretty sure we're using also Rhymecaster, right? Yeah, we're using Rhymecaster. Rhymecaster is increasing Frostball and Glacial's spike damage, increased by 10. Well, technically we're taking both, well, actually we're only taking 1. So it's 10% more damage. And then, as I said, we are using the Water Elemental. So as you can see, those are the difference in the right side. It's all about taking spells that give you more procs and deals more single target damage. Then, for the dungeon build we're using, we have more spells that actually give you AoE damage. For example, you can see here when I go into the dungeon build here, those who are highlighting here, we Iceland Strike 1 additionally target at 100% effectiveness, preferring enemies within with more stacks of freezing. So basically now Icelands will deal damage to more targets. We also have your Flurry and Frostball spell, strike 1 additional target at 80% effectiveness. Very nice. In the raid build, you can technically also take these 2 if you're facing a boss that is having cleave mechanic. Like if you have a boss where there's like 2 of them and you need to like keep attacking both of them, you can also take these 2 and drop something else. But just letting you know that that's an option also. You could also just use the dungeon build on cleave bosses. Then as well, we are taking a Splintering Ray, which Ray of Frost deals 30% of its damage to 5 nerby enemies. So now Ray of Frost is actually an AoE spell, which is pretty cool. Aside of that, we also have this one here. Frozen Orb makes Blizzard instant cast and Blizzard damage increased by 20%. This one here is such a god tier spell, because when you throw Frozen Orb, which your Single-Button Assistant is always going to start with, it's going to make Blizzard instant spell and you can use it right after. And it's just like insane AoE damage. Like it's such a cool combination. And then lastly, in the dungeon build here, we of course are taking off Water Elemental, and we are getting more spell damage from Lonely Winter, because we want to be able to deal a lot of AoE damage. We don't really care about the small Frostball that a Water Elemental cast. That is only worth in a raid scenario. Both of the builds is of course utilizing Hand of Frost, which is the what you can call the apex talents for Frost Mages. It's kind of like a nice one. Like it gives you like just like a way more like to your entire rotation. It just makes it so much more fun. So, for example, just for reading up, in case someone doesn't know what this one does, shattering an enemy has 10% chance to summon a Hand of Frost to pursue your target, dealing 8,000 frost damage and applying 1 stack of freezing on contact. So basically, when you shatter your enemies, which is coming from this one here, shatter, and so when you apply shatter on them, you can actually use your ice lands to shatter those, like, you know, make them explode and deal damage. When that happens, then there's a 10% chance you're going to summon like a... It says Hand of Frost, but it's actually just like an ice pole. It's like a pointy ice thing that just like follows your enemy and fly into them and deal 8,000 damage. But it's pretty cool. Like it will summon a lot of these. Also, each stack of freezing you shatter increases your chance to summon Hand of Frost by an additional 2%. Damage from Hand of Frost increases your spell damage by 2% for 8 seconds. Multiplier application may overlap. So now every time this happens, you deal more damage. And now also, Ray of Frost summons 4 Hands of Frost over its duration, which is pretty cool. So when you use Ray of Frost, which is like your laser beam spell, then it will actually summon 4 of them, which is mean you will actually get 8% more damage, which is more spell damage, which is pretty cool. So pretty nice combination. Also, Ray of Frost gains an additional charge, and its damage is increased by 25%. So that means now the laser beam we actually have 2 charges of it, which is pretty cool. So yeah, very, very nice spell. Again, this was basically the talents we have. Again, the raid build, dungeon build, and both of them you can find on my Discord server. So when it comes to rotation, the Single-Button Assistant is actually doing a great job dealing damage. But we can do something ourselves. Also, I got a really great tip on my stream last time, what you can actually do with the rotation, which we're going to be doing today. But so when you're using the Single-Button Assistant, you will be seeing here that it will be using spells like Flurry, Frozen Orb, Glacial Spike, Ice Lance, Ray of Frost. You might be thinking now, where is the Blizzard? Like the spell we have Blizzard here, where is it? Well, the fun thing is, for some reason, Blizzard is not a part of the single-button rotation, even though it is like on all the, like Shamans have Earthquake in single-button assistant, the Warlocks has Rain of Fire in single-button assistant, but Frost Mages, they have lost Blizzard in the single-button rotation, which is funny. But even though I actually don't mind it, because it now allows me to, you know, I can wait for the tank to now finally have the mobs together, and then I can use Blizzard. Because else on a Warlock, on a Shaman, it sometimes uses Earthquake and Rain of Fire when the tank is still like getting all the mobs together. And then you have a Rain of Fire over here while the tank is standing over there. So I understand it. And also those 2 spells from Shaman and Warlock is something you can keep casting, where the Mage has an 11-second cooldown. So I kind of understand why they decided not to do that. So how the rotation looks like is when you keep pressing 1, it will first summon a Frozen Orb. Then what you should be doing right after that is using Blizzard yourself. Because in the dungeon build, we have this talent here, which makes your Blizzard instantly after Frozen Orb and deal 20% more damage. So right after it opens up with Frozen Orb, you're going to be using Blizzard, and then you're just going to keep pressing 1 and follow your rotation. As you can see here, it used Flurry, Ray of Frost, and now it's going to be spamming a lot of Ice Lances. You can see 1 Ice Lance, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then it's going to be using Ray of Frost again. Now it's going to be using our Frozen Orb, which means we need to be using Blizzard. And then we're going to spam 1 again, and now it's going to be using a lot of Ice Lances again. The thing is here, now you might be thinking, okay, that's pretty cool. Like it actually does pretty good job here. Since it keep using Frozen Orb, then we have to use Blizzard. and it keeps using like Flurry and Glacial Spike whenever those spells are ready, or whenever we have nothing to do, it actually casts for also Frostball and a Ray of Frost. So Ray of Frost is a spell that can technically be cancelled. So if you keep pressing Single-Button Assistant, you will actually cancel your Ray of Frost, which is not good. That is why I made this macro here called SBA. Well, it doesn't matter what it's called, but I made this macro here: cast no channeling Ray of Frost Single-Button Assistant. What it does is that every time Ray of Frost cast, it cannot be interrupted by my button. So it's annoying that I cannot see what it's using, but then that's why I have my spell here next to it, so I can actually see it. But this macro here makes sure that I can keep pressing 1 without it actually interrupts Ray of Frost. If you have bad internet, if you have bad latency when you play, like put your mouse down in the right corner. If the latency is between 50 or 100 or even more, then don't use the macro, because then it's going to make your game run really bad. But if you have good latency like me, right now I have 15 latency, which is great, then you can use the macro without a problem. But if you don't have if you have bad internet or bad latency, don't use it. And it's not a problem not using it. You just have to stop pressing it when it actually is about to cast Ray of Frost. You know, whenever you see that laser beam come out, stop pressing and let it finish. That's basically it. I mean, I think we all can like agree. That's like, you know, overcomable. I don't know. I was like trying to find a Danish word there, but yeah, you know what I mean. So one thing more we can actually do to enhance this rotation is that you saw it was casting 5 ice lances in the rotation right after each other. The problem with using Single-Button Assistant for that is that it increases the global cooldown between each of the spells by 25%. If we cast ice lance ourselves, we can actually cast it way faster than the Single-Button Assistant. So, okay, I need to learn you something about Frost Mages. When we attack with different spells, they are going to get like this shatter stack on them. So you can see here, this mob here now is going to get this freezing stack here, Ray of Frost here, for example, is applying up to like 20 of them. Then every time you use Ice Lance, it's going to eat, you can see here, it's going to eat like, I think it's like 6 or 7, it's actually 6. It's going to eat 6 of the stacks and makes them explode so they deal damage. You can see like it deals damage to all of them, like boom, boom, boom. And that's why you want to be spamming Ice Lance right after Ray of Frost, because Ray of Frost gives almost like 20 stacks. So now you just want to spam Ice Lance to get all the stacks off. And sometimes it doesn't even take them off, which is nice. So basically, the rotation right after Ray of Frost is spamming 3 to 5 times Ice Lance. So if you want to deal 10 to 20% more damage, you can use Ice Lance yourself. And deal even more damage, because you will be casting faster than the Single-Button Assistant, which is pretty nice. You gotta admit, that's pretty nice. So let's try and see how it could look like. So we're gonna be pressing 1, and it's gonna be using all our spells. We're gonna be using Ray of Frost, and we're going to, of course, use Blizzard when it's instant cast. And now I can just use Ice Lance myself. You can see it has 20 charges of those, like 14 charges still. And they'll go. And even the Single-Button Assistant only recommends to use it. And then back to use normal Single-Button Assistant, because then you don't have to worry about what other spells you should be using. And now back to only like using Ice Lance again. And back to using normal Single-Button Assistant. So what you could do, as an example, is, for example, you could take your action bar here, another like someone else action bar, make that one like really big, put it somewhere so you can actually see what it suggests. Like now you can see like I have a single button there, and it suggests I use like that. Okay, so whenever it doesn't suggest Ice Lance, I'm just going to be using my Single-Button Assistant and of course my Blizzard after using Frozen Orb. So whenever it doesn't recommend anything, but now when it recommends Ice Lance, I'm just going to be pressing Ice Lance myself. Just keep pressing Ice Lance yourself. Don't worry about other spells. Just keep pressing Ice Lance. And now it recommends another spell, and I'm going to go back using the Single-Button Assistant. And now back to Ice Lance myself again. And now back to the Single-Button Assistant. And I mean, it's not hard. Like, honestly, it's not hard. Whenever the icon is not Ice Lance, press 1. Whenever the icon is not Ice Lance, whenever it's not Ice Lance, press 1. Whenever it's Ice Lance, press 2. And this will give you maybe 10-20% more damage over a Frost Mage that doesn't do it. So again, you don't have to do this, but I mean the entire point of my videos is to make you deal more damage with a Single-Button Assistant. You know, so that's why I'm trying to min-max the Single-Button Assistant, so we deal more damage, so people who cries about Single-Button Assistant stops crying about it, because we deal more damage, you know? So again, if we just take it one more time, like just the last time, I know this rotation part is longer than my other rotation parts, but let's just do it one more time, just for good sake. So I'm going to be keep casting 1, and I know after Ray of Frost, it's going to be using a lot of Ice Lands. So I'm just going to be using Ice Lands myself until the icon here switches to something else. And I'm just going to keep pressing it, just keep pressing. And now we're going to go back to using 1 again. And now we're going to be spamming Ice Lances again. Spam, spam, spam. And now back to using 1 again. So basically, I'm looking at this icon here in the middle of my screen. Whenever it shows Ice Lands, I'm going to be casting Ice Lands. Whenever I have used my Frozen Orb, I'm going to use Instant Blizzard. And just follow the rotation. Of course, if you still have like a very big group of mobs standing there, and your Blizzard is ready, you are very welcome to use Blizzard again. Because Blizzard actually deals quite a lot of damage, like it deals about like 12k damage, so you're still welcome to use Blizzard if there's like a lot. I would say only use it whenever there's like more than 3 to 5 mobs, like, you know, 3 to 5 mobs, then use it. If not, then don't use it. Then it's not really worth it. But whenever like there's more than 3 mobs or something like that, then it's worth to use Blizzard, even though you don't have an instant cast on the, you know what I'm trying to say. If you don't have the instant cast from Frozen Orb. But basically, that's the dungeon rotation, and I find it really solid. Like, I honestly find it fun. Like, I really find it fun. Because the normal single-button rotations, they can sometimes be a little bit boring. Not boring, but it could just be sometimes like, sometimes you feel like you want to like maybe have a little impact on it. Where this one here feels fun and nice. I like this one here. Because you can actually do something to make it deal even more damage. But again, you don't have to use Ice Lands yourself. You can get rid of it and just let a Single-Button Assistant do it. But then it will just cast a little bit slower. When it comes to single target damage here, we pretty much we're not going to be using Blizzard. I still have the spell down here in case, you know, it summons like 5 mobs or something like that. If the boss actually summons like 5 adds, then we can use it. But on single target damage, we pretty much just, you know, we just keep pressing 1. We just keep pressing 1, and again after Ray of Frost, it will also again use like a lot of Ice Lands. Then I can go back to press Ice Lands myself again. So again, we're just on this now here. We're only going to be using 2 buttons. I'm going to keep pressing Ice Lands as long as I'm like, you know, it shows it, and then back to pressing 1 again. Now it's going to spam Ice Lands again. I'm going to go back, and again, now it wants to use Frozen Orb, back to Ice Lands again. And that's pretty much it. I just keep switching between 1, 2, 1. Like, you know, again, whenever it shows Ice Lands, use Ice Lands. Whenever it shows another spell, then use 1. That's pretty much it. You just keep going between 1 and 2, 1 and 2. 1 and 2, and that's it. And you're gonna be dealing phenomenal damage. Trust me, it's gonna. And again, you don't have to use the Ice Lands yourself, but I'm just saying, if you do it, you're gonna see big damage progress. Like, you're gonna see like 10-20% more damage, which is fun. I mean, who doesn't want to deal more damage? But again, you don't have to do it. You absolutely don't have to do it. So that's pretty much the rotation. Dungeon build, we use our Blizzard, or whenever like the boss summons a lot of mobs, bats. And then the raid build, it's mostly just 1 and 2, 1 and 2, 1 and 2. Yeah. Then, as a true tradition, I'm gonna also tell you what the other spells we have, in case, because we have a lot of new people watching these guides. So it's always nice to like mention what the other spells do that we have. We also have Ice Barrier. Ice Barrier is a shield that pretty much absorbs about like 100k damage, so like half of the damage you have as a HP, and you have 2 charges of them, which is very nice. So you can basically help your healer by not taking damage, since you can use 2 charges for those. Then we have Counterspell. Imagine one of the mobs. I'm just going to pick a random one here. There we go. Imagine this mob here was casting a spell. I don't want it to cast. I wanted to interrupt it. Then you can use your counter spell here, which is going to stop making it cast. So you can see, like, imagine it was like casting, and now I'm going to be using counter spell 5, boom, and it would stop casting. Very nice. Then we have Shimmer. Shimmer is a fantastic spell because you can actually cast a spell and teleport at the same time and still be casting that spell, which is pretty cool. So it's a blink spell, but it allows you to still keep casting. It's just very important you keep facing, like, you know, when you use Shimmer, like very quickly, like face the target again. Then we have Spell Steal. In case this mob here had like a healing over time on itself or a very strong shield or something like that, I can actually steal it, which is quite nice. It costs a lot of mana, but it has no cooldown, so you can just like keep stealing all the buffs on the target, which is very nice. So in case you're fighting some mobs that has healing on them, steal it. Then we have Elder Time. Elder Time is a pretty fun spell. When you use it, it's gonna remember how much HP you had now. So I'll use it. Now you can see it says, okay, you had 100% when you used it. Now all the damage you take, either after 10 seconds, you're gonna go back to 100% of HP, or when you press it again. It's quite important you like use it before you die. I'm pretty sure effects negate by long distance or death. Yeah. So if you go too far away from it or you die, then it's going to be like just cancelled. But it's pretty cool. Like you can technically, if the boss is about to cast a spell that's going to hurt everyone, you can use it. Then the boss casts a spell, you get down to 30%, and then you use the spell again, and now you're going to go back to 100%. We also do have this talent here, which is also going to do it automatically for you, but it's less strong. So you have both the manual one and you have an automatic one, which is pretty cool. Then we have Greater Invisibility, a spell that makes you invisible for 20 seconds, and also removing all threat. So it's kind of working like a feign death from the Hunter, like a Hunter feign death, which is pretty cool. Like it's also just giving you stealth. Then we have Ice Cold. Ice Cold is an upgraded version of Ice Block. So Ice Block makes you so you cannot move and not do anything while you are frozen for 10 seconds and not taking damage. Ice Cold is instead taking, so you take 70% less damage, but no longer grants immunity, prevents movement attacks, blah, 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 blah. So basically, you become like frozen like this, and now for, what is it, like 6 seconds, you take 70% less damage, which is insane. So if the boss is about to cast a very strong spell, use it, and now the next 6 seconds, you're only going to take like 30% of the normal damage, like because it reduces all damage by 70%. It has 2 charges, but you need to wait 30 seconds after casting it before it's ready, like before you can use it again. But in the raid build, we do use this one here, so you only have to wait 20 seconds. Then we have Time Warp. It's a spell that gives everyone in the party 30% more haste, but it's very important you don't just use it. You have to, like, usually if in a dungeon, you would use it like on the last boss, or, you know, when people tell you to Lost or Hero, you know, people have different terms like Hero, Lost, and so on, or BL. So it's like a spell that usually is in normal dungeons, fast dungeons, you use it on the last boss. In mythic dungeons, you might use it on first boss and last boss, and some bosses they require you to use it because you need to kill them faster. In case you have like multiple enemies casting a spell and you want to interrupt them all at the same time, then we have Dragon Breath. So I can use Dragon Breath, and now they all get disoriented. So if they all were casting a very strong spell, boom, now they all stop casting a spell. So we have counter spell for stopping one casting a spell, but Dragon's Breath is actually for like multiple targets. So that's pretty cool. Then we have the Cone of Cold. It basically just makes all these enemies here move slower. They get chilled. And then we have also Frost Nova, which makes them frozen so they can't move. So pretty cool. Then we also have Remove Curse. In case you have a friend or healer or someone in your party that has a curse, you can actually remove it. So you can help your healer removing curses. And then we have, of course, Arcane Intellect, which gives everyone 3% more intellect. Slow Fall, if you jump down from high locations, you can like glide instead. And also Conjure Refreshments. If you use Conjure Refreshments in a group, like, you know, if you are in a dungeon or something like that with more people in a party, it will create a table automatically where people can eat from. So yeah. And then, of course, we also have Polymorph, which is a spell that makes an enemy into a sheep for like a minute, in case you need it. All right, let's test this rotation in a dungeon. Another nice reason for why having ice lands down on your spell bar is that you can actually, for example, pull a lot of mobs without it start using all your cooldowns, because you know Single-Button Assistant is automatically going to use Frozen Orb as the first thing, but actually having ice lands down enables you to just cast it. So now, for example, I can tell the follower tank here to start pulling, but I want to pull in more mobs, so I'm gonna just like pull more mobs. Of course, use my Frozen Shield, pull more mobs, and I'm gonna go behind the tank. Now I'm gonna start pressing 1, using my Blizzard, and now I'm gonna just follow the rotation. It's gonna be using Ray of Frost, and after Ray of Frost, I'm gonna be spamming a lot of Ice Lances myself, not letting the single button doing it. Then back to using my single button assistant. I'm also gonna be using a Blizzard myself, using back to Ice Lands again because it's telling me to use Ice Lands here. Back to using my single button assistant. Back to spamming some ice lands. And now the tank needs to move these. Using my another Frozen Orb, instant Blizzard. And there we go. Oh, another instant Blizzard. Maybe I didn't use my first one. Now back to ice lands. And now back to single button assistant. So of course, the DPS was about like, it wasn't like the most of the fight, it was like an 80k DPS. I, of course, in this mage here has very trashy gear, like 211. So if I had better gear, the numbers would, you know, have been way nicer. But still, the follower modes, they scale up to you, so they actually deal quite okay damage. And you can see, even though they used to do good damage, they actually didn't do as close to me, because, yeah, it's a pretty valid spec, especially Frost Mages right now. They just deal crazy amount of damage. But personally, I feel that was pretty good. So again, I hope you understood the rotation. Like, of course, I was waiting for him to pull in all the mobs. Then I'm going to spam 1. It's going to be using our Frozen Orb. We're going to be using an instant Blizzard. And then it's going to be using Ray of Frost, which is going to deal damage to 5 targets. And then I'm going to be spamming a few Ice Lances until my single button tells me now it's time to use something stronger. And again, it's the freezing stacks that we have on them, which is why we're spamming Ice Lands, because we are like popping them. We can do another test here. Pulling in a few mobs there. Now spamming single button assistant, using a free instant cast Blizzard, waiting for the Ray of Frost to finish. And now we're going to be spamming spamming Ice Land. You can see all the stacks on the target also. It's very high right now. And now it's off, so now back to single button assistant, because now we don't have any freezing stacks on the target. Ah, shame it died. And now instant cast Blizzard again, and you can see there 80k DPS again. Pretty valid. Pretty valid. And again, I have very tragic gear on this character here, so don't blame my DPS, but still we saw that it was also doing, where was that? There. Was it this one here? It was doing pretty well as well. So yeah. So, pretty well. Let's go down to the boss and see how much damage we can actually do in a single fight. Just for proof of concept, I think it's funny if we switch to the raid build, since that is focused on single target damage, just to see how much damage we can actually do on this little fella here. I know in a Mythic Dungeon you will not be switching between specs on the go, but I just thought it would be fun to test it, to see the raid build in action as well. So, let's go. Maybe set my pet to actually attacking. Now use Ray of Frost, so now it's going to have tons of freezing stacks on it. So I'm just going to be jumping around and spamming Ice Lands. Now it's got something else for me in the single button. And now back to spamming some Ice Lands, since it has tons of stacks again. And back to spamming single button again. We could actually use Time Warp on the boss here, since it's only going to be the only boss I'm going to be using, which is going to give everyone a 30% more haste. Back to spamming some Ice Lands. As you can see, it has a lot of freezing stacks. Now back to using single button again. And again, remember, you don't have to keep switching between single button and Ice Lands. You can also just have a good time and just spam single button. Because sometimes it's going to use one Ice Lands and one another spell, once Ice Lands and one another spell. And then it's fine to just keep using. It's more like right after Ray of Frost. Right after Ray of Frost, it's gonna be right after Ray of Frost. It's gonna have like 20 of those stacks on it, and that's when you literally just want to like spam Ice Lances to get all those freezing stacks off. But again, just letting you know, it's nice to still have Ice Lands down here, because it will help you after Ray of Frost to like spam them out quicker. And also just if you need to like pull a few mobs and you need to like move, like at the same time like you have to run and do something, then it's nice also to just spam it while moving. So yeah, great spell. So thanks for watching my little Frost Mage Single-Button guide. Again, the single button of course is very easy to use yourself, but I like to make these videos because, you know, basically highlighting which spells is not inside it, which spells can we use outside it ourselves to do a little bit more min-maxing. So I hope you found this video helpful. In case you want to support the channel, feel free to subscribe, join the Discord server if you want to find all my talents over there, my macros and so on. And feel free to become a YouTube member in case you want your name at the end of the video and just support the channel. I haven't done a few behind the scene or member only videos, but I will probably get to them soon. But yeah, thanks for watching, and yeah, I will keep making more guides, and probably the next one is going to be Beastmaster Hunter. So yeah, thanks for watching. Peace out.